Hi everyone, welcome back to Scary Whispers. Before we start, where are you watching from? Tell us in the comments. If you enjoy our scary stories, please like and subscribe to stay updated. Get ready, make yourself comfortable, and let's begin tonight's spooky tale. Last summer, while hiking deep in the national forest, I found something strange. There was a shiny, rusty hatch on the ground, hidden by bushes and old leaves. Curious about this out-of-place item, I cleared the leaves with my stick and opened the heavy hatch. Below it, a dark staircase led downwards. With my flashlight leading the way, I carefully walked down the steps into a chilly, forgotten bunker. The bunker was quiet and filled with old, dusty equipment and some locked metal cabinets. The silence was heavy, pressing against my ears as I moved deeper inside. At the end of a long corridor, I found a big room full of old books, papers, and maps. The shelves were packed, and it looked like no one had been there for many, many years. Seeing all those secret-looking books and documents made my heart beat faster. I realized I had found a place full of old secrets. But feeling scared about being alone in such a strange and secret place, I decided it was best to leave. Just as I was about to go back, I heard a low, buzzing sound coming from a small room I hadn't noticed before. Inside, there were old radios and machines, and one small light was still blinking. It seemed like this place was still being used, or at least, it was still turned on. Feeling like I shouldn't be there, I rushed back up the stairs and shut the hatch behind me. The quiet forest didn't feel safe anymore. I saved the place on my GPS, unsure if I should tell anyone about it. Weeks later, I came back with a friend to show him the hatch, but it was gone, covered up with dirt and plants, as if it had never been there. We left quickly, feeling like someone was watching us. I decided not to talk about it again, realizing some secrets are better left alone. Yet, I often think about that hidden room full of secrets, wondering about the mysteries hidden right under our feet. Last fall, I was hiking with a buddy up one of the less traveled mountains in Colorado. It was a beautiful day, perfect for tackling a peak. We reached the top after a challenging climb, took in the views, and then prepared to head back down. Focused on our descent, we relied on what seemed like a clear path. However, it turned out to be nothing more than a narrow goat trail. The terrain got steeper, and the familiar markers we remembered from the ascent were nowhere to be seen. Realizing something was off, we stopped and surveyed our surroundings. There were no other hikers, no trail signs, just the silent mountain. Looking up, the peak loomed over us like a giant wall, far steeper than anything we had climbed up. The moment was so overwhelming that I had to sit down, my head spinning with the realization of our predicament. Thankfully, I had downloaded the trail map on my phone earlier. With a shaky hand, I pulled it out and opened the GPS. It showed our little dot far off the intended path, alone in the wilderness. Using the map as our guide, we carefully retraced our steps. It was tense, with each of us watching every footfall, aware now of how easily the mountain could trick the unwary. After what felt like hours, we finally spotted a familiar cairn, a stack of rocks that marked the trail. Relief washed over us as we followed the proper path back down, our earlier fear turning into a lesson learned. That day I learned the importance of being fully aware of my surroundings and the value of preparation. Since then, I always make sure to stop, look around, and double-check my route, respecting the mountain's ability to humble the unwary hiker. In the early spring of 2022, my buddy Flynn and I embarked on a camping adventure in the secluded woods along Harlow Creek. Planning to split the 4-mile trek to the campground, we camped halfway on the first night. The next morning, as dawn broke and the mist lingered over the trail, A strange sight unfolded before us from my hammock. A young girl named Lila, around 6, and her brother Jude, barely 4, stood shivering on the path. Lila, her voice tinged with urgency, said, "We're lost," her small hand gripping Jude's. Both were drenched, their teeth chattering from the cold river crossings they had navigated alone. Without hesitation, Flynn and I sprang into action. We quickly packed up, draped our dry jackets around the children, and began retracing their steps. The woods seemed to close in around us, the morning fog muffling sounds, making the forest feel alive and watching. As we walked, Lila explained in hushed tones that they had chased a frog away from their family's sight and couldn't find their way back. Every rustle in the underbrush, every snap of a twig underfoot ramped up our anxiety. Jude's wide eyes darted around, his imagination likely conjuring up the same eerie figures lurking behind every tree that Flynn and I were trying to dismiss. The deeper we ventured, the more the forest seemed to whisper secrets we weren't meant to hear. After a tense hour of navigating the increasingly muddy path, the sound of distant voices calling, "Lila! Jude!" cut through the mist. Relief washed over us as we rounded a bend to find their parents running toward us, faces etched with relief and terror. Their mother enveloped them in a tearful embrace, thanking us repeatedly, as their father explained the panic upon discovering the kids missing. We parted ways, the parents' grateful eyes watching us as we headed back to our campsite, the silence between Flynn and me speaking volumes of the narrow escape from what could have been a grim tale. The chilling encounter was a stark reminder of how quickly an idyllic adventure could turn perilous in the deceptive calm of the woods. It was the early 90s, and I was about 12 years old. My father and I would stop at a small gas station every morning on our way to school. The gas station was always quiet, with only the sound of early morning traffic breaking the silence. We were often the first customers there, and the attendant was always ready to help us. One morning, we pulled into the station as usual, but something was different. The place seemed deserted. There was no sign of the attendant. My father honked the horn a few times, but no one came out. "I guess he's running late," my father said, looking around. Maybe he had car trouble. I needed to use the bathroom, so I reached for the door handle. "Hold on," my father said. "Let's wait a little longer." We waited for several more minutes, but still, no one appeared. Finally, my father decided we couldn't wait any longer. "We'll stop at the next station," he said. "You can use the bathroom there." As we drove away, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The gas station, usually bustling with early morning activity, was eerily silent. A few days later, my father was reading the newspaper when he suddenly gasped. "Oh my God," he said, looking up at my mother and me. The gas station attendant was found dead in the bathroom. He was murdered. My heart skipped a beat. The same station we had stopped at just a few days before. "They think it was a robbery," my father continued. "All the cash and coins were missing." I shuddered, thinking about what might have happened if I had insisted on using the bathroom that morning. The thought of discovering the body was terrifying. We never went back to that gas station again. The memory of that eerie morning stayed with me for a long time. The quietness, the emptiness, and the knowledge that the attendant had been lying there, unseen. Years later, I still think about that day. The gas station, the deserted morning, and the tragic fate of the attendant. It was a reminder of how fragile life could be and how quickly things could change. A few years ago, my friends and I went on a hiking trip deep in Whispering Pines National Park. We were seeking solitude, but what we found was something far more unsettling. On the first night, I woke up to a strange clicking sound coming from the tree. It was faint, like stones tapping together, but it sent chills down my spine. The next day, as we ventured deeper into the woods, the feeling of being watched grew stronger. By the second night, the clicking had become a constant presence, circling our camp, always just out of sight. On the third night, things took a terrifying turn. The clicking turned into a rhythmic tapping, and we saw them, tall, shadowy figures moving through the trees with unnatural speed and grace. They never came close, but their presence was overwhelming. We were being hunted, but by what, we couldn't tell. At dawn, we packed up and fled, never looking back. We never discovered what stalked us in those woods, and we never returned. Whatever it was real, intelligent, and far more terrifying than anything we could have imagined. Maya and Arjun were excited for their first camping trip together in the remote forests of northern Idaho. They had chosen a secluded spot, high on a mountain, overlooking a vast, untouched wilderness. It was miles from civilization, the perfect getaway, or so they thought. The drive was long and the gravel roads winding, but they finally arrived. After setting up their tent and taking a few photos of the breathtaking landscape, they noticed a few other campers nearby. A group of locals reassured them about the incoming storm, saying it wouldn't be too bad. Feeling confident, they decided to stay. As night fell, the storm hit with ferocity. Thunder rumbled through the mountains, and the rain pounded their tent. But it wasn't the storm that kept Maya awake. Around midnight, she heard something heavy hit the side of their tent, followed by slow, deliberate footsteps outside. Her heart raced, thinking it might be a bear. She squeezed Arjun's hand, waking him. "What's wrong?" he whispered. Maya described the noise and the footsteps. Arjun brushed it off, saying it was probably just pine cones falling from the trees. But the sounds continued, keeping them both on edge. At 3 a.m., they were jolted awake by a blood-curdling scream. A woman's voice, filled with terror, echoed through the forest. "What the hell? Oh my God!" Maya and Arjun froze, paralyzed with fear. The scream was followed by frantic cries for help, and then silence. They knew they couldn't stay. Grabbing only the essentials, they rushed to the car. As Arjun packed the tent, Maya started the engine and called 911. The operator assured them that help was on the way, but in such a remote area, it would take time. As they drove away, Maya noticed something chilling. The cars of the other campers were gone, but their tents remained. Whatever had scared them off had happened suddenly. Arjun drove faster, the thought of the footsteps outside their tent earlier, that night, replaying in Maya's mind. Was it really just a bear, or was someone lurking in the shadows waiting for the right moment? The thought haunted her as they sped away into the night, praying they wouldn't see the mysterious figure again. As they reached the main road, Maya finally let out the breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. They were safe for now. But the terror of that night would stay with them forever, a reminder that sometimes the greatest dangers aren't from nature, but from the unknown lurking just beyond the campfire's glow. Miles, an experienced hiker, ventured into a less traveled part of the forest he loved. His curiosity was piqued by an old, half-collapsed cabin, veiled by thick undergrowth. With camera in hand, he decided to explore, intrigued by the mystery of who or what might have lived there. Inside, the cabin was like a snapshot of another time. A dusty table set with rotting cloth, old cans scattered around, and a bed with tattered remains of bedding. It looked like someone had lived here, maybe even recently, given the fresh footprints he noticed in the dust. As he explored further, a sudden noise made him freeze, the unmistakable sound of footsteps approaching. In a panic, he hid behind a rickety wardrobe, barely breathing. Through the cracks he saw a large, burly man enter, his face obscured by a hood. The man paused, sniffing the air like a predator hunting its prey, and slowly moved through the cabin, stopping now and then as if listening for something. Miles waited, heart pounding, as minutes stretched into eternity. The man finally left, and silence reigned once more. Cautiously, Miles crept from his hiding place, and without looking back, fled through the woods, all thoughts of capturing nature's beauty forgotten in his desperate rush to safety. Sophie ventured into the forest to capture nocturnal wildlife on her camera. Known for its dense woods and rare species, the area was perfect for her photography project. Setting up near a small pond, she mounted her cameras on tripods, ready to record anything that came to drink. As night fell, she settled in her hideout, a small camouflaged tent with a view of the pond. Hours passed, and her cameras captured nothing more than a few nocturnal birds and rustling bushes. However, reviewing the footage, Sophie's blood ran cold. The grainy image of a person, barely visible, lurked in the background of several shots, seeming to edge closer with each frame. Realizing she might not be alone, Sophie packed up, her hands trembling. Suddenly her car wouldn't start, the engine sputtering in the haunting silence of the night. Panic set in as she frantically tried again and again to turn the ignition. Then she saw it, a shadowy figure emerging from the trees, moving with an eerie, deliberate pace towards her. Sophie grabbed her pepper spray and flashlight, her only defenses, and prepared to defend herself. The figure paused, perhaps startled by her readiness, then turned and vanished into the forest, as mysteriously as it had appeared. Heart still racing, Sophie finally got her car to start, and she sped away, the chilling encounter forever etched in her memory, a stark reminder of the forest's hidden depths and unseen watchers. Laura and her brother Ethan drove deep into the secluded woods for a weekend escape. Their destination was a remote lake known for its pristine beauty and untouched wilderness. Upon arrival, they set up camp, nestled between towering pines and the tranquil lakefront. The first day passed peacefully, with a light hike and an evening by the fire. As dusk turned to night, they roasted marshmallows under the starlit sky, the crackling fire, the only sound in the vast silence of the forest. Suddenly, a distant scream pierced the air, echoing eerily through the trees. Startled, Laura and Ethan exchanged worried glances. The scream sounded again, closer this time, urging them into action. Grabbing their flashlights, they hurried towards the source, their hearts pounding. They found a campsite about a quarter-mile from theirs, abandoned hastily. A fire pit smoldered, its embers dying, and a tent stood open, flapping in the wind. No signs of struggle, no footprints, just an unsettling emptiness. Unease settled in as they returned to their site, noticing their own supplies seemed disturbed. A backpack was open, and food supplies were scattered subtly. As night deepened, the forest seemed to close in around them. Every snap of a twig, every rustle of leaves heightened their fear. They were no longer sure if they were alone or being watched by unseen eyes. Sleep was elusive as they kept watch. Shadows seemed to move just beyond the firelight's reach, and the occasional distant snap of branches kept them alert. Dawn couldn't come soon enough. When morning broke, they found small, strange symbols scratched into the dirt near their tent. Hastily they packed up and left, the feeling of being watched lingering long after they had left the woods. I was hiking along a wooded trail near a horse stable, my vision blurry and unreliable without my contacts. As I walked, I noticed a large, dark shape up ahead on the path. Squinting, I convinced myself it was just a horse, probably wandered off from the stable. But then the shape moved, turning its head towards me, and my heart froze. It wasn't a horse. I was staring straight into the eyes of a massive male moose, a buck, towering and powerful. A surge of fear hit me as I realized how close we were, maybe only a few dozen feet apart. My mind raced, trying to remember everything I'd heard about handling wildlife encounters. Slowly, I began to back away, my eyes never leaving the moose. But then he stomped his foot, sending a shockwave of panic through me. My instincts screamed to run, and before I knew it, I was sprinting towards two large boulders behind me. I pulled myself up the first boulder, adrenaline pumping through my veins, lifting me higher than I thought possible. Now about 6.5 feet off the ground, I still didn't feel safe. I jumped to the next boulder, climbing higher until I was perched 10 or 11 feet up. My breath was ragged, my heart pounding in my chest as I dared to look back. And there he was, the moose, closer than ever, just 25 feet away, staring me down with those dark, unreadable eyes. Every muscle in my body trembled violently from the rush of fear and adrenaline. Time seemed to stretch, the minutes dragging on as I sat there, helpless and waiting. I had no idea if I'd been there for 5 minutes or 30. It all blurred together in the sheer intensity of the moment. Finally, as if deciding I wasn't worth the effort, the moose turned and slowly wandered off into the woods. I stayed frozen in place, barely breathing, until I was sure he was gone. Only then did I allow myself to let go of the breath I didn't realize I'd been holding, the tension slowly ebbing from my body as I climbed down, still shaken by the encounter. During a winter ascent of a dormant volcano, I experienced one of the most terrifying moments of my life. The climb had been tough, but manageable, with the peak just within reach. As I made my final steps toward the summit, the crust of ice beneath my feet gave way unexpectedly. I found myself teetering on the brink of the volcanic crater, arms flailing wildly as I fought to regain my balance. The sheer drop into darkness was just inches away, and the thought of plunging into the abyss sent shivers through me. It was a heart-stopping moment, but time seemed to stand still. On another climb, in the late autumn, I faced a different kind of peril. I was ascending an icy rock face when I realized that my pack was too heavy, pulling me backward and threatening to send me plummeting down. Desperation set in as I clung to the icy wall, knowing I had to lighten my load to continue. With no other choice, I steadied myself enough to retrieve my knife and cut the pack loose, watching it tumble down as I secured my next hold. Amidst this intense focus, I heard a strange moaning sound, which, after a tense moment, I realized was coming from me, driven by fear and exertion. Yet another eerie experience occurred during a night hike intended to catch the sunrise from the summit. As I navigated through dense woodland, a loud crashing from the underbrush startled me. Branches snapped, and the shadowy figures of massive limbs moved through the trees. The size of whatever was out there was formidable, and for a moment, I was frozen in place, my heart pounding as I considered the possibility of encountering a large stag or something even more formidable. The most bizarre and chilling encounter, however, happened on a steep trail with my son and our dog. We stumbled upon a deadly snake. Before I could react, our dog attacked the snake, seizing it and unbelievably, using it as a weapon against my son's legs in an attempt to kill it. The danger of the snake biting my son during this frantic moment was incredibly high, and every second felt like an eternity until the ordeal was over. Lastly, while on a lengthy 70 kilometers hike, I crossed paths with a man who seemed out of place, barefoot, without gear, and giving off a clear vibe to keep my distance. I later learned he was an escaped prisoner, which explained the intense discomfort I felt during our brief encounter. But the pinnacle of all my experiences was during a rescue mission for an injured hiker. Without modern technology and carrying both our gear, the journey out of the mountains was grueling. After 3 days of exhausting labor, hauling gear up and down treacherous paths, The relief I felt upon seeing our rescue vehicle was overwhelming, culminating in a mix of tears and gratitude as I collapsed from sheer exhaustion. Each of these experiences, while terrifying, taught me profound lessons about survival, the unpredictability of nature, and the depths of human resilience.